Hey guys, it's Exa and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing some pretty tough labor actually. My best friend Joe recently bought a house, as you guys know if you watched me make a bar for him, and he decided we're gonna build a fire pit. So follow me along on this exciting journey where I help Joe build a fire pit. Yeah, mostly because I have a truck, not because I can carry a lot of heavy stones, but we'll get a workout. So without further ado, let's get on the road and pick up a bunch of stones and things that we need for supplies, and we'll get started. Alright guys, so the first thing we did was buy our supplies. So we have 10 bags of sand, 2 bags of gravel underneath that, and a whole shit ton of tiles, the rest of which are over here with Joe because I kind of forgot to start filming. Okay guys, so the first thing we did was lay out the tiles in the perimeter where we wanted them, and then we took this garden knife cutter thing and stuck it vertically down around the entire perimeter to kind of dig up and make a nice crisp line on the edge of the grass, so that way we can pull it out nice and neatly. And to pick it up, we basically just took the flat-handed shovel and shoved it underneath the grass to pick up sections at a time. Joe's doing a great job while I'm sitting here videotaping. And you can reuse the grass since you're pulling it up with the roots and all to fill in any patchy spots that you have in your yard. Make sure that you're not going to waste any of this good sod that you have, but do make sure that you're watering it frequently until it gets nice and rooted. Alright guys, we've officially broken through the whole outside, and by we I really mean Joe because he's doing all the work. Marsh and I are kind of hanging out. Alright, so once your whole pit is filled out, it should look something like this, and Joe here is just kind of flattening out the loose dirt on top to make it more flat, so that way we don't need to use quite as much sand to make sure that it stays nice and flat when we have the final tiles installed. Alright guys, so now that you have your whole pit dug out and there are no roots left in it, we are going to add our 10 bags of sand. So basically we want to end up with about an inch of sand, and then we're going to flatten it out to make sure that our patio tiles are nice and flat, since the ground underneath it is honestly not very flat in like anyone's yard. So we are just spreading it around, and you can just use a rake or a shovel in your hands or whatever you want to kind of spread out the sand and get it pretty close to flat and level. Okay, so now we filled the whole sand bed and it's time to make it flat. Alright guys, so here we are now going to start installing our little 1 foot by 1 foot patio tiles. So Joe is just placing each one down as close to the one previously, checking how flat it is, and then adjusting the amount of sand underneath it. You might need to add a little more sand on one side, you might need to remove a little sand, and just take your time with this because, as much time as you take to make this as nice and flat and compacted as possible, the better that the end result will look, and you won't feel like you are going to, fall over sideways because it's crooked in the future. And we did find that it works best if you start on one end and go completely across to the other side in rows to make sure everything is nice and tightly fit together. Smushy. There. Come here. You goofball. Get off of my truck. Alright, and now we are almost done. Fun fact, if you have an iPhone, they have a level built into the Measure app. It was super handy for doing this and trying to use like a normal traditional level because it turns green when it is completely flat in all directions with your phone obviously flat on top of the tile. And ta-da! It is completely dark out now, but we finally finished the last few tiles, and I think it looks great. Alright guys, so next we're going to work on the steel ring for going around the fire pit that's going to allow the air to come into the pit from below so it has like a nice cold intake and reduces the smoke. Alright guys, so for some reason I lost the footage that Joe sent me of this, but basically we used one of these 1-inch drill bit saw hole maker things, and made a whole bunch of holes all the way around the top rim of the pit that you see in this video clip right here. Yeah, that just allows the air to come in, and next up we're going to actually install all those tiles that you are getting a sneak peek at right now. Alright guys, so we're putting the stones all the way around the metal ring that we just discussed. So Joe is measuring about 2 inches in the middle of each tile to make sure that they're going to be evenly spaced all the way around. And as you do see the gap between the 2 tiles on the bottom, we did make a couple gaps so that way the air could come in from the bottom and go through that 2-inch gap between that and the metal, and then through the holes in the metal on the top. I hope that made sense. Yeah, so we're just going to place this entire bottom ring here and do a couple tiles and then have a gap between them, and then a couple tiles and then a gap between them, so that way they're all evenly spaced all the way around the outside with some airflow intakes. So once you're finished with that first round, you could go ahead and start stacking up your second and third rounds. Depending how tall the metal ring is that you're using, you may need 4 rows, you may need 2 rows, you may need 3 rows. But basically you want to have the tiles line up almost even with the top of that metal ring, so when we make the big ledge for the top, that it'll sit nice and flat across all of them. And do keep in mind we're not putting gaps in the second and third row, just on that bottom row to get the nice cold air from the bottom. So they're not going to line up perfectly staggered here, but that's totally okay. Just, do your best to try to make sure that they're not perfectly lined up vertically with the one above it, because that would look weird. And now before we get on with the very last step, we're going to take a brief break and hang out with Marshall, because he is the best outdoor cat ever. Alright guys, so I don't have any filming of Joe actually making the mold you see here on the left, but basically we're going to make it in 4 sections, and we use plywood for the bottom and then foam for the sides, and kind of glued it together to make a mold that is the width that we want for this project. And then we're going to mix up our concrete mix with some water, super duper easy, and dump it into the mold, and then kind of flatten it out to try to make it as smooth and nice looking as we can. So it does take quite a fair bit of concrete to do this top layer, and we ended up doing it in quadrants just because they're so big and unwieldy and heavy to move around from the garage out to the fire pit and stack them up. So we did do it in those 4 sections, but you can make one bigger one if you're just gonna make it in place and then break the mold from around it or something. Totally up to you. Or if you have a small fire pit and you're super buff, which I am not, obviously. But yeah, so we're just smoothing it out here, trying to make sure we have the right amount and it's nice and flat all the way around. And then when you're pretty satisfied, then you can go ahead and use your little hoe trowel thing to make the top super smooth and flat, because this is going to be the top of the fire pit and the part you're going to set your cups on and see all the time. So you want to make it as nice and smooth as you can. Ta-da! Here is the finished fire pit. So the last thing that I didn't film was just using some grout on those top pieces to make sure that they are fully adhered together and they're not going to fall off or anything. And yeah, it's completely done. It works fantastically. We've made s'mores, we've had tacos by the fire, we've enjoyed a nice beer. I completely recommend undertaking one of these projects if you're looking for a really nice fire pit area. And of course, there's Marshall and Joe. So if you watched through the whole video, I hope you guys liked it, and if you noticed, I am wearing the same thing that I was wearing at the beginning of the movie, which was before I started. Wasn't really before I started. This is actually 2 weeks since we finished the fire pit, but honestly, I just kept forgetting to film an intro and an outro, so here you go. Yeah, it was super fun. It came out fantastic. I completely love that I now can have s'mores and, drink a beer by the fire, and it's so cozy and classy, and it was completely worth the amount of effort that it took to build that fire pit. So as always, if you enjoyed this and want to see me do some more weird, wacky DIY projects, fun craft things, designer shoes, you never know. I'm a bit of a crazy person with a whole bunch of projects. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so that way you don't miss any of them. Also, sneak peek next week. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be revealing what I've been working on. That is why I haven't been posting videos very frequently, even though I keep promising I will post a video every Friday, and then obviously I don't. But you're about to find out why next week. So again, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you guys so much. And until next time, I hope your day is as beautiful as you are.